Jimmy Dore talking about hate speech. I found this sort of interesting. Somebody had posted this on Twitter to be supportive of Jimmy Dore. And if you read the comments afterwards, it really is quite telling, because it's all about anti-woke and cancel culture and et cetera, et cetera. But let's do this. This is the Jimmy Dore show, just from the other day. And, okay, so, Loving in Virginia, we're in...
I was right, yeah.
Okay, you were right. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
So the big story now with Twitter is that Twitter used to have an abusive behavior policy that many of these right-wingers and anti-wokeists, as they call themselves, and whatever it is, contrarians and anti-authoritarians are embracing because they want a return there. Now, let's be clear. The reason why Twitter changed their policy was because that policy was not working. If that policy worked, then they would have kept it. But it didn't. Because Twitter is a business and it wants to attract a ton of people. And I would have no problem, and I don't have any problem, frankly, with Twitter falling apart. I don't. I think there's value to Twitter. I certainly use it. I think some people, it becomes, a much more important tool for a lot of people who are reaching other people. I think there would be something else that would ultimately replace it. And so I'm sympathetic with people who don't, but I just don't care. The reason why this abusive behavior policy went away is because it didn't work. Because the police did not want to be in the business of having to protect people who on Twitter are being threatened. And because there really isn't any statutory things that can be done here unless the threat is really direct. And more often than not, police departments aren't going to do anything about it. So it didn't work. But they're relying on this. Now, listen to the way Dore conflates marginalized people with people who have marginalized opinions. When we say marginalized people in this society, we are talking about people who have diminished political power and traditionally have diminished political power because of some character about them that society has decided it's okay to oppress these people, either historically or contemporaneously. In society, either institutionally or in terms of just societal bigotry. And he's conflating that with people who have opinions that people don't like hate speech, like denial of a pandemic, like medical misinformation.
Which, to my understanding, is not an immutable characteristic.
It's not a immutable characteristic, and it's also just sort of like a completely different class of category. Your speech, it does not make you a marginalized group. But here he conflates these two things, and watch this.
It says Twitter provides a global communication platform which encompasses a variety of users with different voices, ideas, and perspectives. As a policy, we do not mediate content or intervene in disputes between users. So you may not make direct, specific threats of violence. This is all just the First Amendment law. And they say down here, if you believe content or behavior you're reporting is prohibited in your local jurisdiction, please contact your local authorities. There's already laws on the books for all this stuff. You don't need extra laws on Twitter. And what they've done...
Incidentally, Jimmy probably doesn't know this. Twitter doesn't make laws. Twitter just has rules, terms of service, things. That's not a law. Now, I would give most people the benefit of the doubt, but I've had conversations with this guy where he didn't even understand what a filibuster was and was going on saying that Peter Thiel would be a fine Supreme Court justice. So I don't think there's any reason to give him benefit of the doubt. This is the most reading, incidentally, he's probably done all week. Go ahead.
Jurisdiction, please contact your local authorities. There's already laws on the books for all this stuff. You don't need extra laws on Twitter. And what they've done is they very sneakily, this is the sleight of hand that the establishment has done.
The establishment.
Is they've equated free speech with hate speech. So if you're for free speech, you're against minority groups because then people will be able to hurl hate speech at them.
Pause it for 1 second. And just be clear. I would be curious as to what he thinks hate speech is. If he's saying that they're equating free speech or hate speech with free speech, this is the sleight of hand. Any hate speech is any deeming, he's basically saying there's no such thing as hate speech within the context of our society. That's what he's saying.
Because the establishment is prescribing it, which is very vague, by the way. I mean,
very vague.
I would love to ask Jimmy what the establishment is actually literally doing actively in this, as opposed to, like there being a broad understanding that you probably should not be allowed to use a social media tool to harass people and say the N-word and never leave them alone and dox them.
And this is just, and to be clear, it's just the owners of Twitter made this determination. Now we have a different billionaire who owns it, who's making a different determination. And people are pushing back on it because they use the product and they don't like it. Like, hey, man, I didn't like it when you changed it to new Coke formula. Was that authoritarian? Was the establishment striking back? But here he's going to talk, he's going to conflate. He's going to do exactly what he claims some they is doing, which is he's going to eliminate the concept of hate speech. And then he's going to say that minorities can be either, and look, when we use the term minorities, what we're talking about are people who have been oppressed by the traditional majority in this country, and and particularly in terms of the power dynamics. He is about to conflate that with just like literally 45% of the people just want to say the N-word, and they're being shut down. What?
So if you're for free speech, you're against minority groups because then people will be able to hurl hate speech at them. And so you should be against free speech because it hurts minority groups. Do you see what utter garbage that is? Do you know who they want? The only thing minority groups have is their speech. That's their power. And so what they really want to do is make sure the minority opinion doesn't get heard. They're not trying to protect minorities.
Pause it. Wait a second. There it is. Right? Minority opinion gets heard. They want to keep the minority opinion. So not the opinion of people who are in groups that have been traditionally, we've labeled minorities. But the minority opinion. The fact of the matter is that if you're a black person and you're on Twitter, and
that's all you have.
And people, well, it is definitely an outlet for marginalized people to get their opinions across, without a doubt. But the fact is, if you're a black person or you're a trans person and you're on Twitter, just as an example, and and folks like Jimmy Dore are hurling invectives at you, it stifles your speech. It stifles your speech because you're all of a sudden under threat. Understand that the power dynamics here, he completely ignores the existence of power dynamics.
He flips it. And also, I mean, like, I'm just amused by his considerable condescension towards a lot of people in like the way that he frames it. I remember when he said that a working person would punch me in the face if I ever got near them, right? Which is like a pretty condescending way to talk about, say, working people broadly, that they're just so violent that seeing my face would create that reaction. I mean, all minority groups have for their speech. He has some work to do, in my opinion. But,
I would say
well, a lot of
quite
it.
a bit.
Yeah.
I continue.
Speech. That's their power. And so what they really want to do is make sure the minority opinion doesn't get heard. They're not trying to protect minorities. They want to make sure marginalized people don't have a voice, because those are the people that get censored. They're not going to use censorship against the fucking establishment, against corporate media lying or billionaire funded media lying. They're going to use it against marginalized groups
Against
who are going
marginalized
against
group
the status quo.
who are going
Pause
against
it
the
just
status
one
quo.
second. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not defending the sort of Hunter Biden laptop sort of thing, but that was censorship against like corporations and mainstream news. In a way, like using Jimmy's terminology, right?
But
Like,
but notice how he doesn't see
yes.
a white kind of power structure, a white patriarchy, whatever it is, traditionally white centers of power as a part of the establishment. It's just like vague wokeness in corporations. That's just Tucker Carlson. That's not a class analysis. That has nothing to do with really looking at establishment power in this country, because it being patriarchal, it being very white, is central to understanding what power is in this country and what it isn't.
Really cool on the IM says maybe Jagoff is getting his talking points from Glenn Greenwald, but doesn't actually get it, which it does sound like he's confused there.
Yeah.
But I mean, the idea that the establishment, I mean, this is what he usually complains about, right? Is that the establishment allows marginal groups to speak too much. But he's redefining what a marginal group is by people who just have bat crap crazy opinions. They're not even bat crap crazy, hateful ones. Mm-hmm. But here, continue. I mean, this is all just, he's a moron. And the reason why he will never have anybody on to debate him about any of this, folks, I mean, I think everybody knows this, is because he couldn't even defend it for 5 minutes. He wouldn't be able to defend it for 30 seconds. He has no idea even what he's saying. He's so stupid.
Media lying or billionaire funded media lying. They're going to use it against marginalized groups who are going against the status quo, are going against the establishment. People like whoever would want to protest. Like right now, it would be those railroad strikers. They would use that to shut them down.
Pause it. First of all, I don't know what future he's talking about where they're using that to shut down railway workers, but railway workers we're hearing from. Like, he is ignoring the existence of history. He is ignoring the existence of things like transphobia, of racism, of anti-Semitism. He is ignoring all these things to make up who's going against the power structure. He also has a complete, like you say, misunderstanding of what the power structure has been in this country. Go ahead.
Whoever would want to protest. Like right now, it would be those railroad strikers. They would use that to shut them down under the guise of protecting minorities from hate speech.
What?
the owners of the businesses, are those the minorities we're protecting? Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, this is his conflation. He just does not believe that there is such a thing as hate speech.
And I just want to tag on this tweet put this up, Bradley, by Matthew Vigeland. I tweeted out this related to like Kanye getting suspended for posting the swastika Star of David. Zealand points out these tweets were not even close to incitement to violence by any kind of American legal standard and would easily fall under the category of protected speech. Deleting them and suspending him is just the normal content moderation Musk has said he isn't doing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And it's good. I think you should be able to ban people for posting swastikas on your platform.
Absolutely. But this is also what we were saying from the beginning with what Musk was going to be facing. He wants to pretend that he is immune from society's standards in running a business. And the fact of the matter is, when you run a business which is reliant upon customers, you are not immune from the way that society deems is appropriate.
Yeah, until like Twitter's nationalized, then maybe we can have a conversation about the terms of service being closer to the First Amendment. But This is a private company, and they get to make determinations about whether or not their users can be harassed or attacked, and what kind of content that their advertisers want next to their products.
And here's the thing, is that in that arena, in that arena, and I would have no problem with it being like, some type of like co-op or something like that. I'm not sure I would want the government to own this per se, but maybe there's a mechanism in which to do it. But in that arena, what it ends up being is just simply a consumer boycott type of arena. I don't like that as a means of political change per se, but in terms of like of this type of system, that's what we have. And they won't argue. People like Dore will not argue within the context of that arena because they can't, because they know they'll lose. So they have to try and elevate this as if this has some type of other transcendent issue, ideals or principles that are associated with it, because within the context of the arena in which this fights, which is what does the audience want for this product? What does the audience want? And the audience does not want people to be able to put swastikas up there as a means of attacking other people. The audience does not want rampant transphobia. The audience does not want rampant racism. They don't want that. And Jimmy Dore will not fight on that terrain because he knows he will lose. You can't say like, I can't believe that they're canceling, whatever show it is, The Bachelor. This is a fight against my free speech. I love The Bachelor. I can't believe they're canceling it. The Bachelor is important, and consumers, we have to gain together and say like The Bachelor should be on. That is the context of this argument here. And if you want to argue that this is has a different role in society than The Bachelor, and you want government intervention, the best role for that would be some type of antitrust, which can prevent it from being anything but The Bachelor. I mean, that's the bottom line. And they won't go there because they also are against things like antitrust. They are against an active government that is policing these businesses. He can decry billionaire owners of media, but I got some very bad news for you about Twitter.
Yeah, that's why Charlie Kirk is like, fawning over, we played this yesterday, fawning over Elon Musk. They don't care about billionaire ownership of social media companies writ large. Like, they just want the right kinds of billionaires. And when Elon's like does some content moderation, then they're going to be like, time for Peter Thiel to buy or whatever.